The Elder Scroll games are unique in a couple of ways, but one of the most striking things about them is how the main quest is something that you can mostly ignore if you want to. Once you've gone through the obligatory first part of the game to orient you and pick character attributes, there's a point where the game just says, okay, you're on your own now. Elder Scroll games have been absolutely packed with distractions, in a way that you could think of them as games that are more about the side quests than anything else. The various provinces of Tamriel, a continent on the world of Nim, are characters in themselves. Unique settings with interesting lore and interesting stories. Playing an Elder Scrolls game is often more about breathing in this world rather than chasing the final battle with the villain of the day. Which is why I think that the best parts of these games are, in fact, the side quests. In fact, when it comes to the faction side quest, it could be more accurate to refer to them as side campaigns, and among all these side campaigns, one of the very best has to be without a doubt the Dark Brotherhood faction quest from Elder Scrolls IV: Oblivion. Now, fair warning, I am going to totally spoil this part of the game, so if you still plan on playing Oblivion, you may as well go do that first and then come back to this video later. The Dark Brotherhood is essentially an assassin's guild in the world of Elder Scrolls. They're a secretive, underground movement like the Thieves Guild, but unlike the Thieves Guild, the Dark Brotherhood is in it for something more than just money. They're a religious cult dedicated to a being known as the Night Mother and Sithis. And if you're willing to pay the price, the Brotherhood will take out anyone, whether for a just cause or an unjust one. In Oblivion, the Dark Brotherhood is probably one of the most compelling quests in the game, but depending on how you played it, you may have never encountered them at all. And you see, that's the first aspect of the Dark Brotherhood side quest that I want to highlight as a great example of design. The core philosophy of the Oblivion RPG system is that your character develops in response to how you play. You don't get a bunch of generic points to distribute how you wish. Instead, for example, the more that you use heavy armor, the better you will get at it. Like throwing fireballs, with practice, soon you'll be an expert. It's a fun system even to today, but it's not just the leveling system that works this way. To start a quest chain, you need to behave in a particular manner. Specifically, you have to murder someone. Kill one innocent or massacre a lot of not so innocent characters and you might be given this special invite. This is an excellent idea to me simply because if you play the game as a lawfully good character who avoids bloodshed and is righteous, you'll never even know about this dark side of the world. It's a natural way to present options to the player that expand as they decide on how they wish to interact with the world itself. Now, one flaw to this is that you can accidentally kill someone and then get this invitation, but luckily membership into the Dark Brotherhood is not automatic. If you decide to pursue membership of the Dark Brotherhood, you have to go through a trial before being inducted. This gives the player who simply made a mistake the choice to keep their virtuous playthrough on track. The most amazing thing about the Dark Brotherhood side quest is how it could completely flip your perspective of the game world. Played straightforward, Oblivion is a high fantasy story of good versus evil with elves and evil towers. But when you're in the Brotherhood, that viewpoint changes completely. Even when you're doing something else, the fact that you're a member of this secret organization changes your perception. Yes, you're a hero who's fighting against a great evil, but you're also a representative of a great evil yourself. There's no way to be a part of the Dark Brotherhood that doesn't color the rest of the game's experience, and for something that is supposed to only have an optional set of quests in a game, that's a pretty impressive feat. This line of Brotherhood side quests also does another thing very right: variety. Each one of these main assassination quests that you go on is a unique and interesting story of its own. It's a small part in a larger story where only your imagination can serve to fill in the gaps. In fact, for the most part, you play the person who shows up to end the story for someone else. Within the questline, there's this mission called Whodunit, which is one of the highlights in the Dark Brotherhood side quest. This is a setup a bit like those murder mystery stories where a bunch of people are locked in a mansion, except you're the murderer and they're none the wiser. It's a good example of dark humor that permeates the side quest as a whole. But what makes the individual side quests in the line so great is that each association has its own rules and conditions. It's a brilliant example of how you can take a basic quest type, in this case what's known as a kill quest, and spin it out in a variety of ways so that it never feels like you're doing the same thing twice. I'll never forget one of the early quests called Accidents Happen. Basically, you have to take note of your target's patterns, break into their house, sneak into a crawl space, and then wait for the right time of day so that they sit down under a mounted animal head. A loose bolt or two later and your target is no more. It's moments like these that are hilarious and deeply satisfying. The next thing that I think that the Dark Brotherhood side quests do very well is create a self-contained space that feels like its own little world. With the mages and fighter guilds factions, you felt like you were visiting these places, but they didn't feel like anyone lived there or it was really an organization. But the Dark Brotherhood layer is an interesting place filled with interesting characters. These guys are a diverse group of people who are evil in all sorts of different ways. For example, Goldrin Balmore, I think I nailed his name, is an assassin who wears heavy armor and carries a giant hammer. Plus, he's a huge orc. Using stealth and being subtle are foreign ideas to this guy, but he has a place in the Brotherhood because, as you know, the Night Mother doesn't really care how you kill after all. Tignava and Orvia, I know I just murdered their names, introduce us to the idea of a shadow scale, members of Argonian society that are ordained to be assassins because they're born under a particular star sign. Vincenti is another notable character from the Brotherhood, which I'll talk about in just a little while. But apart from the main quests that help you rank up in the guild, the various members may have personal missions for you, such as the request to hunt down a renegade shadow scale. Each of these individual side quests not only give you something to do, but they develop the characters of the guild, which is important for what comes next. Now, eventually, you're given the job of taking out every single member of the guild. You know, the ones that you got to know a little bit better and you began to get a little attached to in the preceding hours. It's of course part of the general setup for the side quest endgame. When you look at the overall design of all the faction side quests in Oblivion, it's obvious that they all have the same basic structure. Ultimately, your character is going to end up as the leader of that faction, which usually means something bad has to happen to the person currently in charge to create that vacancy. But to be honest with you, in other faction side quests of the game, this can feel contrived, not to mention the ridiculous situation where the hero is also the leader of every single guild in the game. In the case of the Dark Brotherhood, however, it doesn't feel contrived at all. I mean, the one thing that could qualify you as being the leader of an assassin's guild is being the best backstabbing murderer in the group. Cleaning house and getting new blood who are intimidated by you makes perfect sense. Even if this choice was done by accident, it's a good lesson in how making a game mechanic such as progression fit the tone and theme so that it creates something that feels right and special. Which brings me to my next point. Vampirism is a disease that you can contract in Oblivion simply by getting infected in battle with a vampire. Most players would simply drink a cure disease potion or visit a shrine before the 3-day window for easy cures run out. Remember Vincenti, who we mentioned a little bit earlier? Now this guy right here is a vampire, which makes him a perfect assassin for the Dark Brotherhood. Now if he likes you enough, he'll give you the option of being made a vampire by him. This changes the whole dynamic of vampirism because the game communicates a couple of things to you. First, Vincenti is a sign that vampirism is a useful trait. He directly says so and gives you a choice. This makes the player consider vampirism not as a negative status element, but as an active gameplay choice. If you embrace vampirism, it changes the entire way the game plays. Some of your stats are dramatically boosted, you have a feeding mechanic that you have to manage, and you can't travel in sunlight or you'll take damage. Vampirism is the perfect trade-off for the player who'd be attracted to the sneaky nature of the Dark Brotherhood in the first place, and it transforms the game in fundamental ways. That is, until you decide to go through the rather involved methods of curing full-blown vampirism. I think what I've shown you today on Detour Quest is that there is a whole heap of lessons that you can learn from the Dark Brotherhood's questline in Oblivion. First of all, make sure your quest initiation feels natural and it fits with the lore. In this case, a specific character behavior triggered the side quest, a behavior that is thematically linked to the quest. This is something that other faction side quests in Oblivion don't have, since you just walk into a building and just ask to join. Secondly, it's important for related side quests to feel thematically united. The Dark Brotherhood quests all felt unique to that faction. They had their own pace and texture, their own lore. Another game series that does this well is The Witcher, best exemplified by number 3. That game's side quests also felt like they could be standalone episodes or narrative arcs within a larger story, which is exactly what a good side quest should be. Thirdly, although a side quest is optional, it can still have a profound impact on the game as a whole. Players who did the Dark Brotherhood quest played a profoundly different game to those that didn't. Even after the side quest arc was done, it still echoed across the rest of the game experience because your past actions are still in your memory. If you haven't played Oblivion in a while, you may have forgotten that the Dark Brotherhood faction quest is super dark compared to the tone of the rest of the game, even when you're running around in shiny armor as a paragon trying to save the world.
Alright everybody, we're done. Let's wrap it up.